So my name is Jeff Mongelli. I've been in healthcare technology for going on 17 years now. And I'm a member of the FBI WatchGuard group for healthcare and also Homeland Security Information Network. Basically what that means is I'm among a group of the top chief information officers in the country who share information about the things that are going on in the cyberspace as it relates to healthcare. For example, as of this morning, how many of you have heard of ransomware? Have you all? Okay, so most of you have heard of ransomware. That seems like it was kind of yesterday's news, but this morning, a medical center in, I believe it was Missouri, got hit with ransomware. So it's still out there, it's still prevalent, it's still a real threat. So outline for today, the things that we're going to cover, we're going to talk about what's happening in the cyberspace in healthcare, what you can do about it, and we're going to talk about some specific steps that you can do at home. So we're going to play a video, and while this video plays, what I want you to do is think about how a call like this could come into your office and how easily information could be taken on a given patient or how your system can be breached by an action like this.
Hackers are everywhere. From Ashley Madison to JP Morgan, from Jennifer Lawrence to the federal government, our biggest celebrities, corporations, and institutions have all been the targets of devastating cyber attacks. I wanted to see how bad a hack can get. So I invited a few of the world's best hackers to try to hack me and show me where my vulnerabilities are. And now I'm going to meet them in Las Vegas at DEF CON, the biggest hacker convention of the year, and see what they found. This might not have been the best idea. DEF CON is the biggest hacker convention of the year. It's a place where thousands of hackers come to hear talks, to demonstrate their newest hacks. It's actually a place that's so dangerous to be on the internet that they tell you to turn off the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth on your phone, and they tell you not to use the ATMs too, because those could be hacked as well. This is the DEF CON ballroom. This is sort of the main room where things are happening, and it's pretty wild. I think this is car hacking village. This car is locked. Can you get me in?
I'll unlock it for you. Should be good.
Hacking is no longer like this fringe activity, and if you are at DEF CON, there's a good chance that you're here because you want to learn what could happen to you or your company.
Anyone here first time in the SCCTF? Holy crap.
I invited Chris to hack me with his team, but they're going to hack me using social engineering, which is essentially hacking without any code. They just use a phone and an internet connection.
We help people with human security issues by testing vulnerabilities for like a network test, but it's for the people network. We test those vulnerabilities, see where the holes are, and then help people learn so they can patch them.
Can we try some of this? Can we try some, see if it works?
Yeah, we probably could have our star Visher here make some phone calls as
Let's do it.
Sure. Do you want to do a sample phishing call?
What's phishing?
Phishing is voice solicitation, and basically what you do is you use the phone to extract information or data points that can be used in a later attack.
Let's do it. Who are you going to call?
Maybe I'll call your cell phone provider
Okay.
and see if I can get them to give me your email address.
I bet they're good. I bet they have my back. But yeah, go for it.
I'm going to spoof from your number, so it's going to look like it's calling from you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay? My baby, I'm sorry. My husband's like, we're about to apply for a loan and we just had a baby and he's like, get this done by today. So I'm so sorry, I can't call you back. I'm trying to log into our account for uses information and I can't remember what email address we used to log the account. The baby's crying and can you help me? Awesome.
In just 30 seconds,
gmail.com?
Jessica gets my personal email address.
Now, if I needed to add our older daughter on our account so she could call in and make changes, how would I need to go about doing that? You would have to send me a secure PIN through a text message? Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think I'll be able to receive a text message if I'm on the phone. Shh. Oh, I'm not on there either? So I thought when we got married, he added me to the account. Okay, my
Jessica
name is
uses my girlfriend's name and a fake social security number
5127.
to set up her own personal access to my account.
Wait, I'm sorry. So there's no password on my account right now? Can I set that up?
She even gets the support person to change my
Thank you
password.
so much for your help today.
So she just basically blocked me out of my own account.
I'll get her fed after this. All right, thank you.
Holy shit. So they just gave you access to my entire cell phone account.
You're gonna have to go on and change your password now because it's Jess, my name.
And all it took was a crying baby and a phone call.
Yes.
I really thought that my cell phone company would protect me. I mean, like, this is the most basic stuff, and they're not doing it. And if they're not doing it, you know all these other businesses aren't doing it either. Anyone with a phone and an internet connection can do social engineering. But I was curious, what can a hacker with serious coding skills do?
Well, DEF CON is the world's biggest hacking convention. It's hacking everything, hacking social, hacking hardware, hacking software, hacking various systems.
I asked Dan Tentler, a well-known security researcher, to turn all of his firepower on me.
I did get into quite a number of things that I found.
So what were the first things you did? How did you start hacking me?
I quickly found your Squarespace blog and had an idea. Basically what I did was created a bogus Squarespace site and sent an email to you, a phish asking you to go to this website, run this certificate installer.
And I did it, because
Yeah.
I'm an idiot.
So once you ran that, it gave me access to your computer, and I created several fake pop-ups that looked like system pop-ups that would ask you for your credentials.
You didn't even have to have my passwords.
No, you gave them to me.
I gave them to you.
Yeah. So I stole your 1Password keychain.
And 1Password is where I store all my other passwords. So effectively by...
And your social security number and your Amex stuff and all your stock trading and bank information. I can send email to everyone in this room as you. I am you right now, if I wanted to be. If my evilness is working correctly, it should actually be taking pictures of your desktop and pictures through your webcam every 2 minutes. And I have been watching you for about 2 days now. In coffee shops, at your mom's house, on a plane. Here's your editing stuff. There's you like.
Oh my God,
looking
so
nervous.
this is literally
Every 2 minutes.
through my webcam.
Yeah, through this guy.
How badly could you have messed up my life?
I could have made you homeless. I could have made you homeless and penniless.
How?
Like,
How would you make me homeless?
Like I have control of your digital life in its entirety. I have all your credentials. I have all your access to all your financial information, all your work information, all your personal information. I can pay people with your bank account or your Amex account. I am you. I can fully impersonate. Like, the only thing I couldn't doctor would be like your fingerprints.
This is like as bad as it gets.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's bad.
So it turns out that Dan Tentler is very good at his job. I mean, he hacked the hell out of me. He got everything. I mean, frankly, I want to take my computer and throw it into the deepest part of the ocean, and I want to become a hermit, and I want to never touch a piece of technology again, because holy shit, that was everything. That was the keys to my entire life, and he just pulled them out of his pocket.
Scary, isn't it? So what's important to me in that video is it only took one click. And how many times a day are we clicking on things, opening documents? It only takes one click for that to happen. So what are the new threats that we're facing out there? Who's heard of VPN filter? Okay, so this is one of the newest threats that's out there, and it's extremely nefarious, and I'll explain why. Ransomware is still out there, and then we have more on advanced spear phishing. By the way, what she was doing was a phishing technique called phishing. So VPN filter, you know you've arrived as malware when they make a logo after you. It's called a man-in-the-middle attack. Essentially what happens with VPN filter is it's malware that attacks your network. You don't have to do anything. It gets onto your router at home, typically, because the main threat is at the consumer level. It gets onto your router, and from there, it installs a package that gives it the ability to intercept all of the data that's flowing from your computer out to the internet. And it can, at the same time, conceal what you're seeing on your screen. So for example, VPN filter gets on your home router. You log on to your banking site. It just took all of your password information that you used. It stole all of your credential information. While you're looking at your bank balance, they're siphoning off all the money in your bank account, but you're seeing the same bank balance because they're telling you what you're going to see. So this is a real threat that's happening right now. There are literally millions of devices that are affected. Linksys, Netgear, most consumer-grade firewalls are being impacted and are vulnerable to VPN filter. So this is a little bit more about what it does. So not only can it install payloads, but it can install ransomware. It can do a number of different things. What's scary about this and what makes it particularly dangerous is it's one of the first mainstream malware attacks that's attacking not an end user, not your computer, but it's actually attacking a network device. So we're going to see a lot more of these types of things to come. And it doesn't require a click. It doesn't require you to do anything to get onto your network. It's a virus that's scanning the network, looking for devices. They can usually identify exactly what device you have on your network. Once they find the device, they'll try to attack it. The only way to stop it is by updating the firmware. If you don't have the skills to do that on your own, then you either have to call them for support, call your internet service provider. Let me ask you this. How many of you use your internet service provider's phone, modem, as your firewall at home? Okay, that's not a firewall. And it's also very easy for someone to say, oh, they have Cox, they have Spectrum. Let's see if they have this device. If that device responds, then they're going to go ahead and exploit it. The sad thing about this is most people don't have the technical skills that are required to update their firewall at home. So what most of us are going to do is nothing at all. What can you do? If your firewall is more than a couple years old, or if you can figure out whether or not it can do automatic firmware updates, if it can't do automatic firmware updates, you really should upgrade your firewall. We're not talking about a lot of money. You could do it for $100, $200, and you really should do it. So let's talk about ransomware. For those of you that don't know, ransomware is essentially malware that gets onto a computer network. It locks the computers, it encrypts the data, and you have to pay, typically in cryptocurrency, to get your data unlocked. It's hit many, many major healthcare organizations. Presbyterian, if you recall last year, was hit with a strain of ransomware. You may have heard of strains like WannaCry and Petya. The latest version is GrandCrab 3.0. There used to be a defined set of different types of ransomware out there, but now you could literally log on to the dark web, fill out a web form, define what SIC code or industry you want to target, and download your own personalized copy of malware for less than $100. So we call that malware as a service. What's it costing us? The numbers are frighteningly huge. It's extremely lucrative for the global miscreant community. What we're seeing now is we're seeing a slowdown in growth in the shotgun attacks, and we're seeing more targeted attacks. So they're collecting more information and targeting individuals and specific organizations. How are they getting information on people? They're using social engineering, and they're using credential theft. Some of the other attacks that happen, you may have heard about Nuance. Some of you may have experienced, if you were using some of Dragon's online services, some of you may have experienced some downtime from them. The interesting twist on these attacks is they're now covering their tracks. So Banco de Chile lost $10 million, but more importantly, they had 9,000 workstations destroyed and 500 servers. So in terms of the total cost of the organization of this attack, it's going to far exceed the $10 million that was extracted from them and ended up in Hong Kong last they could see. So in essence, what that does is it makes it very difficult to do the forensics work to find out what hit them and how much was taken, because everything gets destroyed. Another one that's very interesting is Doxware. And what Doxware does is it'll infect your system, notify your patients that your system's been compromised, and they're going to put leverage on you to pay the attacker. Another one that kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people was an attack and a vulnerability in Apache struts. Most websites, most mobile devices are using software that's built on an architecture called Apache. Well, there was a vulnerability identified in that architecture that led to numerous attacks. Since we're talking about mobile devices, the Internet of Things creates tremendous vulnerabilities for us. In fact, over a third of the manufacturers say that the data that's flowing between devices is not encrypted. Almost half say that most of the organizations that are using their devices have been compromised in some way, that the quality of care. Philips announced last year that they have millions of devices that they have no way to patch that have been deployed. There was no mechanism built in for fixing these devices. Another nefarious type of an attack is malvertising. Essentially, this is you going to a website, and simply by going onto that website that's been compromised, it can download malware onto your computer. So this is another type of an attack, and some significant websites have been breached with malware of this nature. MSN, one of their most popular games, was compromised last year, and literally millions of people downloaded malware without even realizing it. What type of malware are a lot of people downloading now that they're not aware of? It's called crypto mining. The biggest challenge with Bitcoin is it costs money to mine. Well, the way around that is if you don't have to use your own resources to mine your Bitcoins or mine your cryptocurrency, then you could just mine as much of it as you can possibly scale to, right? So what they've done is they've created malware that will download onto your computer and start mining cryptocurrency. The only sign that you're really going to have that you've been compromised is the internet's going to seem slow, or all of a sudden your computer is going to be running slow. This is a growing segment of cybercrime right now, is crypto mining. So let's talk about phishing attacks. How are these threats getting in? For the most part, it has to be user activated. There's generally three types of phishing attacks. There's phishing, spear phishing, which is more targeted, and then there's vishing, which is multi-vector. Phishing, we've all seen it. It's an email that comes into your system. It's not from who you think it's from, and it's got a link in it or an attachment in it, and it says, download me or open me. I'm good for you. Typically links, a lot of times it's going to be a Word document, an Excel document, or a PDF file. And it's almost always, if it's phishing, it's almost always an email. Spear phishing is a more targeted attack. So they're targeting you as an individual. We're going to get into, in a couple of minutes, social engineering. The problem with spear phishing and everything that we're doing on social media, if you're in healthcare, not just a provider, I was asked earlier, if you're a doctor, should you be posting on social media? Our position is not only if you're a clinician in healthcare, should you not be posting on social media, but if you've chosen to work in the healthcare space, you should not be posting on social media. Your data, everything you post publicly, is being weaponized and used against organizations. Ha! Got to hit the right button, that helps. So vishing is an example of what we saw earlier, where she's using the phone to attack an organization and get information. So those can come in multiple formats. And what we're seeing right now, and I'm going to give you some examples in a moment, is attacks coming in where you'll get a phone call, you'll get an email, and the threat is embedded in the email, and they're siphoning information off. So here are 3 scenarios of what I'm talking about. You receive an email from a new patient. It's got a PDF. The patient calls to confirm that you received the information. Can you please open it and confirm that it's my record? You've just opened the door to all of those threats that we talked about a moment ago. Another example is a staff member went to pay a bill online. They clicked a link in the email that they thought was from the lender. So what's happening is through phishing techniques and through social media, they can find out what types of vendors you're using, perhaps what bank you have, and they're going to use that information to target a spoof and attack you. In this particular case, the browser was redirected to an attack site. All it said was your computer's been locked. It actually wasn't, but the user believed that they had been. And she got a phone call on her cell phone telling her that she needed to make a payment. And all of it was fake. This one's particularly scary, and it's happening across corporate America, and it's happening to medical centers also. Let's say that you have a hospital that's got a construction project going on site. It's easy for a hacker to find out what the lending relationship is involved. In this particular case, they hacked into the Outlook server, and they read through the threads of emails. Well, when a wire was about to be sent, they created rules in Outlook to change to spoof the CFO, to tell the staff member, we're ready to send this wire to this vendor, here are the new wire instructions. They called the bank, relayed the new wire instructions. The bank should have verified that change order, but they did not. They sent $300,000 to a phony corporation in New Jersey, which then ended up in Germany. FBI got involved, the money's gone. This is something that was put out in September of last year, specifically to doctors. In the Midwest, patients were spoofing doctors using spouse information, using all kinds of social media generated information, and convincing the banks to give them access, and they wired tens of thousands of dollars they pulled out of physician accounts. So how do you reduce your risk? Your cat's not going to help you. How do we spot a spoof? Hopefully you guys in the back will be able to see this. So here's an example of a fake Amazon website. You'll see it just has an extra N in it. As hard as these companies are trying to keep up with all these fake names and buy these domains and get ICANN to shut down the fake names, it's still happening at such a rapid pace that it's difficult to stay on top of. So here's a fake Chase site. What I want to point out on this particular example is you see the first .com, but then a lot of people will see that second .com and think they're fine. But it's that first extension that tells you what site you're on. Everything else after that could just be a page, it could be anything, but it's not relevant to the actual web server that you're on. This is what a good site should look like. You should see the lock. Sometimes the bar will be green. You want to look to see that you have HTTPS as an extension. That tells you that everything that's happening over that connection is encrypted. It's not foolproof. Those certificates can be hacked. But generally speaking, particularly if you're doing anything of a financial nature, you want to make sure you're behind an encrypted website. A lot of hackers who are putting up spoof sites won't go through the trouble of spoofing a certificate, so you'll just see HTTP. How do we tell when we have a spoofed email? So here's an example of an email that was received from a fake UCLA site. You have to look closely, or you have to know that that's not an actual UCLA domain name. It's from Dropbox. It could easily be spoofed from another doctor who's referring a patient to you. It could be from a patient, as in the example I relayed earlier. The trick is when you mouse over that document, that link, it's going to show you in the bottom left-hand corner where that link is actually pointing to. You'll see I put a copy of it up on top. Let's see if that works, right there. So that's when you mouse over it, you're going to see this pop up. And that tells you, yeah, this is not what it says it is at all. Here's another example from DHL. Shipping companies are frequently spoofed. So here when you click on the link, you'll notice that it's going to a bogus website. And you'll see that also pop up down here. Another common attack that's happening right now is from payroll companies. So your staff member gets a email from ADP, and it's pertaining to a policy change at Memorial Care regarding their payroll. They click on the link and they've just introduced malware into the organization. Here's an actual email that went around through an orthopedic association. All of the members of this association got hit with this. That's a PDF document containing malware. This person opened it and nothing happened. Well, something did happen, but they didn't think anything happened. They found out through their community that, hey, we're being spammed with malware, and it turns out it installed crypto mining on her network. So one of the ways to reduce your risk, don't take the bait. They give you all kinds of reasons to click on a link. Just don't take the bait. Let's talk about passwords. For the past dozen years, the most popular passwords have been literally 1234566 and password 123. We have to get out of the idea of thinking about passwords as passwords and start thinking about passwords as passphrases. So how good do you think we are at protecting the keys to the kingdom?
We're talking about cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon.
And what's its name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School.
Oh, when did you graduate?
In 2009.
Oh, great.
It's like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay.
But,
Have you had this cat for a while?
yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie.
Mm-hmm.
So like a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1?
Like my birthday.
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th.
Oh, nice. And what year were you born?
95.
Oh, great. So Jolie, 6/12/95.
Yes.
Got it.
So you mean to give my password right now? No, I cannot do that.
But we all want to know what it is so we can tell you if it's strong or not.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. Okay, one is Tel Aviv. Yeah. 468, and then Israel. It's only 3, but it's for me it's strong enough.
Ireland 1234.
Gemma 123. Spelled Gemma.
Well, most of them are Italian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Like what's a good Italian password?
My grandma's name.
What's your grandma's name?
Maria.
Maria. So Maria is your password?
Oh yeah, now you know my password. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So a point I want to make is what all of these people, all of these attacks, what they're preying on is our innate desire to help other people. So how many of you got into healthcare to help people because you wanted to help people, right? Well, that desire in all of us is what's helping people with malicious intent to be effective in these types of attacks. They're preying on that natural instinct that we have. Last year, NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, who initially gave us the fancy password idea, revised their recommended standards for passwords. Among a number of things that they said was we should be using passphrases instead of passwords. Fancy characters don't really help anymore. It's more important to have a longer password. And unless that password's been compromised, we don't necessarily have to be changing it all the time. On that particular point, we don't agree. In healthcare in particular, because the sharing of, I'm sure nobody in here has ever shared their password with a staff member to help get something done or anything like that. I know that never happens. But because in some medical organizations that's kind of prevalent, we don't recommend never changing a password. You may not need to change it every 90 days, but it should certainly be changed at least a couple times a year. Do they have to be as fancy with the special characters and all of that? Turns out that's not really helping with the crunching capabilities that they have right now. It's better than using regular dictionary words, but you're better off using a string of words that don't relate to each other with capitals interspersed, and instead of putting numbers at the end, which everyone has figured out, intersperse numbers throughout the password. You're going to have a much stronger password than if you do it the way we've always thought about doing passwords. If nothing else, particularly where your finances are concerned, strengthen your passwords. Nowhere else, with anything that has sensitive data, your Amazon account where people can just go on and one click and buy something and change the shipping address, with things like that and your finances, make sure that you have a unique password on those sites and make sure that it's long. Make sure that it's a complex password. Another thing that they suggest is on these answers where they ask us what school we went to, what was our pet's first name. Those are extremely easy to identify. A lot of those answers are posted on Facebook pages. So rather than provide that information out into the wild, come up with your own cheat sheet of answers to those types of questions, write it down, stick it in your desk drawer, and basically lie. Don't be honest when they ask you what the name of your first pet was. Put down something different. When they ask you what your high school mascot was, put down something different. Don't make it easy for a hacker to figure out what those answers are. But for gosh sakes, write them down because you're not going to remember. I had to learn that one the hard way. I mentioned earlier about social media. This is the bane of cybersecurity existence. Let me say that again. Social media is the bane of protecting your personal information. Everything that you post on social media, everything that your employees are posting on social media is being weaponized and used against you. Last month, a database in Florida from a data aggregator who none of us have ever heard of was hacked. 350 million US citizens and businesses were in that database. For each entry, there were up to 400 data points. Do you like dogs or cats? Do you smoke? What kind of car do you drive? All of this information was in there. This information was not collected from any single database, but it was collected from a number of databases, most of which are for sale. Facebook, Apple, a perfect example. Geolocation services. Apple, I don't mind that Apple knows where my car is. I kind of like it when I leave a stadium or something and I can find my car. The problem is Apple is selling that information to a handful of data companies, again, who none of us have ever heard of, who are tracking all of that information. So it's one thing for Apple to have it, but it's a whole nother for these companies that none of us have ever heard of to have that information along with all of these other data points about us. So that's what's happening out there. So if you think your information is not in the wild, go on the dark web, please don't, but you can go on the dark web and find information on yourself. There are a number of sites out there, like ID Agent and a few, where you can put in a password, and it'll tell you whether or not that password's been compromised. You can put your email address in there, and it'll tell you whether or not your email address and associated information is for sale on dark websites. Just this morning, I saw an email where another medical facility had a user say that they received an email that said, we have your password, here's your password, which was correct. We've hacked into your computer, we've taken pictures of you both here and at home, and we have other information on you that we're going to expose if you don't send us, I think it was 200 Bitcoin or $200 in Bitcoin. This type of extortion is the new wave. It's particularly germane in healthcare because healthcare databases are being targeted for information on individuals that they can then exploit or compromise. So when we think about government officials, the city, state officials that you're treating, the corporate executives that you're treating, all of that information, celebrities that you might be seeing, all of that information that you have on them is being sought by cyber criminals right now so that they can contact them and say, we're gonna release this and make it public if you don't pay us. That level of extortion is happening right now, and it's increasing in frequency. Again, it all starts with social media. They're using that information on your staff, on your spouse, to get into databases, just like we saw happen in that video. The reality of the healthcare community in particular is we're all connecting to multiple databases. Most of us want to be able to work from home. Most of us want to be able to finish up our charts and our charting from home. Well, every node that is open is a gateway into your hospital's medical system. So if you're using the same computer that your kids are using and playing Fortnite on or whatever they might be doing, they're exposing the hospital and whatever databases you're connecting into, you're potentially introducing a virus into that organization. So it's extremely important. Number one, that system that you're using at home should only be used by you. You should not be using your family's workstation to log into your health records at your office, to log into your office. You should not be using your family workstation to be doing your banking. None of that information should be accessible from your family's workstation. It should just be yours. So what are some of the specific things that we can do to help protect ourselves? I mentioned lengthening your password. On this page, there are some links. So this is going to be available to you, this slide deck. There's some links here to make it easier for you to follow these steps. So there's a link to a site where you can check to see if your email has been compromised. Again, I can't emphasize enough, get smart about social media. And you really need to pass this on to your employees because they're posting like crazy and the vulnerability that they're creating to themselves and to the organization is significant. Use a credit reporting service. If you're not willing to sign up for a bunch of alerts from your banks and credit cards and department stores and all of that, if you're not going to do that and monitor all of that yourself, then pay to have somebody do it for you. That's in essence what they're doing. Sign up for LifeLock. Here are a few of the most common ones. Credit Sesame is free. Track your banking on your mobile device. I get an alert every time a withdrawal hits my bank account. I get a text message. Most banks are offering that type of service. I highly encourage you to set that up. It can be a little bit of a pain in the neck. Before too long, you're just looking at it and not paying much attention to it, but you're aware that money's coming out of your account. Finally, consider locking your credit. It's a double-edged sword. The agencies have not been as responsive when it comes to unlocking your credit as we would hope they would be. So sometimes that can be a little bit of a protracted process. In other words, if you go to buy a car, they're not going to be able to run your credit unless you, in advance, alerted the credit agencies that you're going to be having credit run on you. But what that does is it prevents anybody from being able to take out new credit in your name. What it does not do is if your information's already in the wild, it's not going to help much with that. So I want to make a last point, and this is a little bit of a tangential comment, but it's germane and I want to mention it. The Office for Civil Rights in October is planning to announce that that they're going to open for public comment whether or not patients should be able to participate in HIPAA fines. The reasoning is, and it's valid, the reasoning is if you get breached, that introduces a hardship onto the patients to clean up their identities, the time that it takes and the process that they have to go through to do that because their information has been compromised. We're against this, despite its well intentions. And I encourage you, when they announce for public comment, to let OCR know that you're not in favor of this. We stand against anything that creates or worsens the adversarial relationship between patient and provider. And it's our opinion that this will absolutely do that. The last thing you need as providers is to have patients gunning for you more than they may already be. So if they are armed with HIPAA and they're looking for ways to trip up your organization so that they can report you and participate in the windfall, I don't see that as a good thing in the quality of care. So when they announce that, I hope you stand opposed to it and let OCR know. So that's all I've got. We went a little quick. We covered a lot of ground. I hope I didn't scare anybody too much. I don't see any lunches coming up. So I think we're okay on that. Yes, sir.
You mentioned credit sesame free.
Yeah.
How they can provide free services without using your information? Because anything which is free, the product is you.
Yeah, they may. So they may be relying on advertising. They do sell other services, so they may be offering some of their services free in exchange for hoping that you upgrade to some of their paid services. So I just had a question about biometric security. We are all thrilled and excited that fingerprint, retina, and facial recognition is going to save us from this nightmare of the Wild West that we live in cybersecurity, right? No. The problem with biometric security is it is still ultimately a file, encrypted as it may be. It's still a file on a computer somewhere or on multiple computers. So once that gets compromised, my fear with biometric security is it's one thing to change a password. How do you change a retinal scan? How do you change facial ID? How do you change a fingerprint? So that data is just as vulnerable with a determined effort as any of the other data that we have. So it's going to help. It's going to require a higher level of sophistication in order to compromise that information, but it is not an ultimate cure. It has its own weaknesses. Good is two-factor authentication. So everywhere you have the opportunity to add two-factor authentication, where you get a code sent to your phone that you need to enter to log in, highly encourage you to add two-factor authentication. Again, it's not foolproof, but it makes it that much harder and lops off a lot of the hacking community to get into your information. So again, where you can add two-factor authentication, you really should.
How good are the software security suites?
Yeah, the problem with legacy antivirus programs is they're all signature-based. So they're looking for known patterns of behavior in order to protect you. So number one, they have to be updated to be effective at all. And if they're not automatically and regularly being updated, which it would stun you, how many of our own healthcare clients don't have automatic updates on their antivirus? So that's not a given. But so that's the first problem, is that they're backwards looking in their protection. The newer viruses are more amorphous, So they're more dynamic and changing. So it's a lot harder to identify a particular signature. So there's a newer wave of protection that's out there that prevents specific types of programs from running, like Visual Basic and things like that. So it's almost like whitelisting a category of applications that you can run, and anything outside of that you can't run. And then we're seeing an increase in artificial intelligence, which is really more like just sophisticated algorithms coming in to detect a pattern of behavior. So one example is if you do happen to get infected with ransomware, as a bunch of files are getting encrypted, it'll stop that process and say, I'm not sure whether or not we're supposed to be doing this. Let's find out. And it'll prompt the user to acknowledge that, yeah, we're converting over to encrypting all of our data. So that's unfortunately, most of what we have available to us is not that great. The newer ones, like Sentry, and Sentinel-1 is one that we use. WebRoot is another one that we use that are a little bit more sophisticated. And those are also community-based applications. So much like what we're doing with the FBI and with Homeland Security, where we have a community sharing information. So if a hospital gets hit with a strain of ransomware in Boston, UCLA knows about it within minutes. So we're seeing more and more of that. The same thing's happening with antivirus products. There's a centralized database that's constantly pinging. So if they identify a threat, they update all of their systems pretty much instantaneously or as quickly as possible. So we're seeing more in that.
What's your advice on using an application such as LastPass for password?
I do. I highly recommend it. These are basically password keepers. And you saw in the video, he said, oh my gosh, that's the one password that unlocks everything. So there is truth to, you have a password protector that stores all your passwords for you. It does make it very easy to remember all your passwords. So it allows you to have unique passwords and more complex passwords. I couldn't tell you what most of my passwords are because they're locked in my software in the program that I use. I use a product called RoboForm. There's LastPass. There's a number of good products out there. I highly encourage you to use them. I have it on my phone. It requires biometric. It requires my finger to log into it. I have it on my home computers, and it requires a very long passphrase to get into that could ultimately be hacked, but on the software programs that I've tested it against, it would take 100-some years to hack. So if you're not using a product like that, there are many that are free. Up to a certain number of passwords, I recommend doing that. On your desk are a reminder form. Every Tuesday at 10 o'clock, we send out a security reminder. It's not a solicitation. It's a short email. A lot of our clients share them with their staff. It's a reminder that talks about what's happening in cybersecurity and HIPAA. So I encourage you to sign up for it. It's free. It meets a HIPAA best practices recommendation, and it'll be very informative. For example, the last one that we talked about this Tuesday was about whether or not you should lock your credit because of that $350 million user hit that was breached that most of us have never even heard of. Yes, sir.
If the hacker gets into your bank account maliciously, who's responsible, you or the bank?
Well, because of the federal insurance, we do have some protection there. So right now, most consumers are not being held accountable for those types of attacks. On that same point, let's talk about cyber insurance real briefly. Most of you are underinsured for your cyber insurance policy. I encourage you to look at your policy limits and increase them. You should at least have a couple $100,000 or more for your personal cyber insurance policy. Let's do the math. If you have a breach or you have some type of an incident, the minimum fine is $25,000. Every fine is typically 2 penalties. Every incident is typically 2 penalties. One is for the incident itself, and the other is for some type of breach of policy or something like that. So if you look at the records, it's almost always a 1-2 punch. So that's $50,000 pretty much coming out of the gate. If you have a $25,000 coverage right now, which is the default for a lot of add-on policies for med-mal practice, you don't have enough. And right now, the actuarial tables are in your favor. So cyber insurance is going to get a lot more expensive in the next 5 years or so. Right now, it's relatively cheap to get. So I would encourage you to get it. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.